Angel's Awakening is the first issue of a sci-fi superpowered spy thriller written by Daniel Parker and drawn by Bogdan Ristia. Not sure if I said that right. I backed the second printing with less than 24 other people. I don't know how many backers the first printing had, but I think it's safe to say that Angel's Awakening is pretty obscure. The story takes place roughly 100 years in the future. Protagonist Jessica Sawyer is a compelled volunteer for a secret joint program between government organization Trident and private company Stone Enterprises to artificially turn humans into psychics. Although there are hundreds of volunteers, only Jessica is a success and gains the power to teleport. As the only success of the project, Jessica is trained to be an agent for Trident and is given her first assignment to recover a person in cryostasis from the Britannian Empire. For now, the only context the story gives is that the country Jessica works for is the Republic and is the last free nation, while the Britannian Empire controls basically the rest of the planet. But in the back of the book, there's an appendices section of sorts that gives a lot more information. Most people are going to read the story first, of course, which is what I did, and it is easy enough to follow without the extra information in the appendices, which I'll talk about later. Jessica meets her contact in Britannia, who doesn't know where the frozen man she's looking for is, but gives her the location of a facility where she can find out where he is on their computer. She suits up, breaks into the facility with her teleportation powers, takes out the guards, and gets the data. She thinks all this was a little too easy, and realizes she was right when on the way out, she's confronted by this strange, scantily clad, blue-haired woman. Jessica explains that this is an elemental and they run the Britannian Empire, and that this elemental is a water one. Once again, there's more of an explanation of what elementals are in the notes at the end of the book. A fight scene ensues, and this is one area where Angel's Awakening really shines. Parker and Ristia put together a couple of really good dynamic fight scenes that are highlights of the book. It's never just characters punching or shooting each other. There's strategy and use of the environment, along with lots of exciting panel angles and good buildup of tension. The one complaint I do have, though, is regarding the water elemental woman's abilities. During the comic, she gets shot with a laser blaster multiple times, and the blast passed through her like she's made of liquid. I assumed this meant she could turn her body into liquid, like the T-1000, or the Liquidator. But there's a point in the first fight scene where Jessica tries to break her neck and almost succeeds. She starts choking and has to blast Jessica off her. Then in a later scene where Jessica tries to do it again, the water elemental lady prevents it by knocking her down before she can get close. So it seems like getting strangled or getting her neck broken is a real threat, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense if she can turn her body to liquid. So I don't really understand how exactly the elemental abilities work. That's pretty much the only complaint I have about the fight scene. Jessica disables Water Elemental Lady, escapes, and heads to the facility where her target is on ice. But the Water Elemental Lady has arrived ahead of her and is moving the cryostasis pod when Jessica gets there. Jessica wonders how this happened, which seems kind of dumb to me. Water Elemental Lady told her that her mole was a double agent, so obviously Water Elemental Lady knew exactly where she was heading and what she wants to do. Another fight scene ensues, this time with motorcycles and a moving truck. It's another high point of the comic, even better than the first, in fact. Spoiler, Jessica wins again and escapes with the cryostasis pod. It's not exactly a big plot twist. When she returns to the Republic, the identity of the man in the pod is revealed. He's another psychic who was injured in a mountain climbing accident close to our current time, and was put on ice because medicine of the time wasn't advanced enough to heal him. So now he can be thawed out and patched up in hopes of putting him to work as an agent with Jessica. And with her pondering this, the comic ends. Except, of course, for all those note pages. Some of them are about relatively minor details, like Jessica's equipment, and some of them are about more major details, like Water Elemental Lady's name and backstory, which never came up in the actual comic. The most notable details are about the setting and background. Two groups of superpowered people, psychics and elementals, were fighting a secret war against each other for hundreds of years when the psychics' birth rate fell off for unknown reasons. As the psychics' numbers dwindled, the elementals decided to come out into the open and take over the world. They started in Britain, hence the name Britannian Empire, took over most of Europe and North Africa, the Middle East and Asia made treaties with them, and then the Britannians invaded North America. Canada surrendered immediately, a detail that always makes me chuckle, and after a coastal invasion, the USA was ready to throw in the towel too. But Texas isn't down for this, so the state secedes from the Union. The Britannians regroup and invade Texas, but the state's forces have been armed with new technology by Stone Enterprises, which allow them to catch the Britannians off guard and wreck them. So the Free Republic of America is basically just Texas, and they've been in a Cold War with the Britannian Empire for about 20 years. And that's where our story began. The story was easy enough to follow without all this, but it does add a nice bit of context to everything. An unfortunate thing I noticed is that this appendices section has quite a few typos. Not enough to make it a chore to read, but enough to be noticeable and to look a bit less professional. Considering this is the second printing, I wish this had been touched up a bit. The art is something a bit different from the dominant comic art styles, which tend to be either a sort of idealized hyper-realism in superhero comics or a style that's imitating manga. This is more of a sort of 80s to 90s indie comic vibe. For the most part, I think it looks quite nice, especially the coloring. It's very Blade Runner-esque cyberpunk. There are some details that are a little rougher, like if you zoom in on the skyscraper building's windows. Some of them are uneven, but it's not something you'd really ever notice unless you're carefully analyzing the art. There are also some great-looking panels with very dynamic-looking layouts. There's a bit of mild cheesecake, like panels of our female heroine hanging around in her underwear and getting dressed, but nothing that would make this rated higher than PG. Overall, Angel's Awakening gets a recommend from me. It's not reinventing the wheel, but it's combining enough different elements that don't generally go together with a good enough execution to feel fresh. And for a crowdfunded indie graphic novel, the price was pretty reasonable. That's all for now. Next video is going to be tackling something a bit more ambitious. The subject of politics in art and what it means when people say art is too political or not political. Like if you enjoyed the video, comment if you have thoughts, and subscribe to help us out with the algorithm. Independent channels that don't talk about big brands are getting screwed over all over YouTube, and it's especially hard for smaller channels. So if you want to help give us a little boost, it really does help if you do all those things on the videos. We also have channels on Rumble and Bitchute where we put up videos early when possible. Links in the description below. Thanks, and have a great day.